am Chef Laura Bonicelli of the Bonicelli Cooking Club, and I am here at Eversharp Kitchen Store in Northeast Minneapolis, and this is Sharpen Your Knife Knowledge. I'm going to introduce you to Maddie Jensen of Eversharp in just a moment, but first I'd like to tell you a little bit about the history of this event. This is our second year of doing Sharpen Your Knife Knowledge, so it's not a real long history, but it is a very good one. Last year we were in the lockdown part of the pandemic, and Maddie and I planned and did the entire event remotely, which was great. It was great that we could do it that way, and it went beautifully, but I'm so happy this year that we can be together and here in this beautiful store. A little bit about Bonicelli Cooking Club and what it is. Bonicelli Cooking Club is an online cooking school and community for home cooks that are looking to up their cooking game. The club is now 3 years old, and it is absolutely a dream job for me. I love every second of it, partially because I get to do really fun events like this. So anyway, the club has hundreds of video lessons and recipes and downloads and weekly live cooking webinars with me. And this weekend, we are launching a new program called Mindful Mediterranean. And access to the purchase of that 28-day program will be available to the general public starting this weekend. And we are going to give away a couple of passes tomorrow when we do our drawing, and this goes up on Facebook. So yes, we have prizes that we are going to give away, and it's all going to happen tomorrow. If you do have any questions during the presentation, just type question into the box and the chat box, and my sister Mary will pick it up and let me know what the question is, and we'll answer them either during the program or at the end. So otherwise, just say hello. We'd love that too. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Maddie. Oh wait, first I want to go through the agenda. Maddie will be here in a second. So what we're going to start with is types of knives and their characteristics, and the types of steels used, how knives are made, and we have a story from one of the most interesting knife manufacturers with a 700-year-old legacy that dates back to the time of the samurai. I'm not kidding about that. Ceramic knives, we'll talk about those, the pros and cons, buying knives for yourself and for others, and we have some people here tonight that are buying knives for themselves and for others. Caring for your knives, this is a big one. Washing them, how do you wash those knives? Storing surfaces, what you should and shouldn't use. We're going to talk about sharpening and honing. What is that, right? Honing. And the right knife for the right job. Now we're going to look at some specialty knives because there's some really fun ones, and we're going to take a look around the store and see what else is in here, and then we'll take some questions. All right, now I'm ready. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Maddie Jensen of Eversharp Kitchen Store.
Hi.
Maddie, how are you?
Nice to meet you. You know,
Yeah.
here. Yeah, right, crowd.
Oh, we have people clapping out
Yes.
there. Yeah. So, okay, I want to talk just a little bit about the prizes.
Yeah.
Okay, just we should show them because we are going to have people watching this. We're going to do this drawing tomorrow at 4:30. So if you watch this before 4:30 tomorrow, which is what?
December 9th.
December 9th, Thursday, December 9th, before 4:30. Put your name in the comments and say, I would like a prize. And then we'll do a drawing and we'll announce the winners live at 4:30 tomorrow, and we'll put them on in a post as well,
Yeah.
too, so you can pick it up. Okay, so what do you got there?
So we're giving out a couple pastry blenders. So that, when you're baking, it's going to come in handy. And then we're giving away one cheese set from Zwilling. And what that looks like, you can kind of up your cheese party game, is you get a soft cheese, a hard cheese, and a Parmesan cheese knife.
And that's perfect. We're going to use those tonight because we're going to have a little cheese party after
Exactly.
this. Right, okay. And then what I'm giving away is 2 3-month memberships to the Bonicelli Cooking Club and 2 registrations for the program Mindful Mediterranean, which will start on January 2nd. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's get into the program. We wanted to start with talking about types of knives. I mean, I know there's German and I know there's Japanese. What are the differences? What are the steels used? It's
Absolutely.
Kind of a mystery.
There's so much, and you can kind of go down a rabbit hole of looking at all of the various steel choices. A lot of companies are using proprietary steel combinations to kind of set themselves apart. But to kind of scale it down, German knives, So we really focus on Wusthof knives here. Going to be a little bit softer steel than a Japanese knife. So at home, that means it's easier to sharpen. It goes dull a little bit quicker, but this would be the knife I would grab for a squash. I would not grab a Japanese knife for that. I save those for like the veggies and kind of like precise chopping work.
And more delicate.
Exactly. And so that from there though, it's personal preference. These German knives tend to be a little bit heavier, and so not like too heavy, but maybe people with arthritis, or if you're doing a lot of prep work, you might want to go towards something a little bit lighter. And that really is where it comes into, if you can hold the knife, you're going to pick out a much better knife than looking at a picture online.
So all that being said, how do you feel about knife sets?
I think you look at them, because sometimes if people want 8 steak knives, that is a good bundled price. But if I tend to look at starting at like the 6-7 piece sizes, because those kind of cover the really basic shapes, like a cook's knife, a bread knife, a paring knife. Generally, so sets include, when they count those pieces, a block and a steel and a scissor. And so that, if you're not going to use a couple of those pieces, it probably makes sense to make your own set. And so we do get a lot of people that customize their own sets too. So it really will help you kind of work out the best value.
And that's the advantage of coming here, is that you have the expertise and your staff has the expertise to walk you through how are you going to use this knife, what do you really need. I mean, if you don't need, if you never cook squash, then you don't need that German knife, right?
Exactly.
However, if you need a cleaver, or you're going to be dealing with chickens, then you've got to have a cleaver, and it probably should be a heavier cleaver.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's, there's also, so cleavers, there are, sometimes people think this is a cleaver. This is an akiri. So square-shaped knives are not all created equal. The thicker ones are meat cleavers. That's to go through a bone. If you use your veggie cleaver on that, you will get a big chip out of it. So you kind of want to make sure you're getting the right type of cleaver.
So explain to me what a santoku is.
Yeah, so a santoku has become really popular. It's on a lot of cooking shows, but there's a reason for it. Most of the knives that are santokus are gonna have the hollow ground dimples on the side. You're gonna get more of a rock when you're chopping, versus the nakiri is more of a chop motion. But I really, lightweight prep work really comes in handy, and it's just kind of a good all-around knife.
Yes, I use mine much more than I use my chef's knife.
Yeah, absolutely.
The chef's knife has a really distinctive rock to it, and it's great if you're doing something like mincing onion, mincing basil or whatever it is. But this, if you're doing zucchini, and plus those little dimples help to release the zucchini so it doesn't stick to the blade, which is really wonderful.
Absolutely.
Isn't it fun to be surrounded by
Yeah,
all of these
we can
knives?
just keep grabbing lots of knives.
Like this little darling here. Look at how beautiful this is.
Yeah.
This, I don't know if you can see that, but look at the design on the blade.
That's 101 layers of Damascus. So Miyabi Birchwood is one of their top. They have one higher line, but I love it. That stays sharp quite a long time. A little harder to sharpen if you're doing it at home, but for us, it's not going to make a difference. They're both relatively easy to sharpen.
So would you consider this?
That's it's an akiri, but it's definitely geared towards America.
Because it has a little more rock than the other one does, which I would really like. I like that little.
Kikuichi does definitely, they don't cater to what they're thinking the American public is looking for. So this is going to be the traditional nakiri shape. Miyabi is geared towards the home chef on what they think the rock is going to be a little bit more comfortable. One's not better than the other. It's really how you end up cutting.
So as far as types of steel used, typically, I mean, there's tool steel, there's carbon steel, there's Damascus.
Yep.
And those are the three main.
There's a lot. So there's...
And then combinations of the others.
Exactly. Okay. And so for most home chefs, you're going to want a mostly stainless steel knife. Mainly because, high carbon, you need an oil, and it patinas, and sometimes people think that's a bad thing. Like, it's going to kind of darken. That's good, that happens with it, but if you don't take care of it, it does rust a lot easier than a stainless steel knife. So just kind of knowing what features you're looking for in a knife and how much you're willing to take care of it.
Okay. So, and again, the German knives are definitely heavier.
Yep.
And so I have both. And what you said is exactly how I wound up using them even before I started cooking professionally, that, by just the weight of the knife.
Exactly.
And I have some Shun knives, which are really fairly delicate
Yeah,
and
they
light.
are. Yep.
And you just know that you're not supposed to push on that knife too much. As a matter of fact, we
Exactly.
chipped it badly,
Yep, and
they
we
fixed
fixed
it. So I was ready to throw it in the garbage, but I didn't do it. So, okay, so that brings us to, we're going to just leave these here,
Yeah.
okay? Because we're going
We got
to
lots
talk
of
about
them.
some other ones. How are knives made? So, I mean, I had an employee years ago that bought a knife at IKEA.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this part of the knife where you're gripping that blade was actually sharpened too, and he
Yep.
kept cutting himself
Yep.
on the knife. And he goes, "What's wrong with this knife?" And it's like, well, you shouldn't buy knives at IKEA, and then things would be fine. So how is a good knife made?
So there's a lot. So a lot of companies are going a little bit more modern, so they are using machines to help along the process, but there's a lot of human oversight and a lot of steps to make sure there's quality control. So exactly, like when you find a less expensive brand, they might not be rounding and smoothing the top of the knife, or you might be getting like a sharp kind of call this like the spine of a knife. So it's those like little touches that add to it, because there's the concept of making a knife. A lot of people can attempt it, but it's what they do, how they temper a knife, and all these kind of steps that they've kind of honed in over the years. That's what's going to set it apart.
Right, and we're talking about blacksmith level
Exactly.
work. We're talking about artistry, not about stamping them out,
Yes, and so
which,
that's
which is done.
yeah, absolutely. And we still sharpen those. We don't judge you if you have those knives. They still need to be sharpened, but you'll definitely notice the higher quality knives, they're going to hold their edge better. Part of it is because over the years, they've really figured out all the steps. So it's not just using the same steel. It's how they heat it. It's how they finish it and how they end up sharpening it at the end stage. So those are a lot of things that go into it that some companies can make kind of like, it looks really similar, but maybe their metal isn't quite consistent throughout the way, and we'll get in for sharpening and they start chipping or they kind of pit out. And that's going to be, it's maybe not a consistent mix throughout the whole
So
blade.
that's during the actual sharpening that
Yep.
happens?
That's more like the fake Damascus knives that will come in. So Damascus, a lot of people, like, you're supposed to look for that name. And so when you're getting a reputable company, they'll tell you how many layers. So some knives have 42 layers. This one has 101. But sometimes they call it Damascus clad. Damascus clad is just printed on the blade.
So the design on there, is that a result of
All the layers
Of
pressed
all the
together.
layers.
Yep.
it's so beautiful?
Yes, and that's also the price should kind of tell you if it's real or not. When it's $40, that's definitely going to be a Damascus clad knife. But most Damascus knives are in the $200 to $300 price range starting out.
So how many brands do you carry here in the store?
Well, that's good. So we started off, we were 100% Wusthof, and we've expanded over the years as people are looking for more Japanese knives. So in the Japanese lines, we started with Kikuichi. We have Miyabi.
I love that name,
Yeah.
Kikuichi.
Miyabi has a bunch of different lines, so we have a large assortment there. We added Global. We get kind of their sale specials. And then as of like last week, we started carrying Shun again. So we have those. It's easier to list off the names than the amount. And then Caracera Ceramic Knives. That's our ceramic company that we sell. And then the highest end knife we sell is Nesmuck, and those are hand forged in Germany.
Yes, and they are
And those are like
gorgeous.
the ones that are $7,000 on the website.
And those aren't here.
No, that one's off the premise.
Darn, okay. What is the most expensive knife that you have in the store?
Well, it's a Nesmuck. It's just not $7,000. It's a bargain at just under $2,000.
Oh my God, look at that.
So this is 210 layers, and this is hand forged. So that's the difference. So you can get a really high quality machine forged knife, and then this is literally a blacksmith sitting over and making each knife. It takes us like 6 months to get in a single knife on order.
And I wish you could see this handle.
Yeah, it's
just radiant. Oh,
that's-
you can put
yeah.
it over here and
The part about Nesmuck is they customize it. So we tell them which handle of their different kind of high-end pieces we want on a knife, and then they make it after we order it. So it's not sitting in a warehouse.
And the design is like, it's like water. It's
And
just gorgeous.
They have a bat somewhere hidden on there. That's their logo.
Oh,
it might be on the other side.
I see it.
Yep.
There's a bat. Yeah. And they must have stamped that in.
Yep.
Oh, it's just wonderful.
Tip it down a little bit.
Better?
Just tip it down a little bit.
Tip it down.
There you go. Good.
Okay, I'm taking direction here.
Yeah.
All right.
It's teamwork.
So in line with what we've been talking about, we have a film that came from Kikuichi in Japan. It is a beautiful film, so I'm so excited to share it, and it has a lot of fire in it and a really wonderful story. So Mark is going to play that right now for you.
奈良は最初の首都だったんですけど、日本の首都の生まれは日本の文化の生まれですね。日本の文化の生まれは奈良なんですね。刀鍛冶っていうのは、奈良っていうのは特に刀鍛冶が始まった場所とされているんですけれども、昔刀鍛冶がなぜ始まったかっていうのは寺社仏閣、ここだったら東大寺や春日大社があったことによって昔その領地というかお寺の特に堺の包丁に関してはトラディションをすごく守って作っているんですね。そういう伝統的な作り方であり、でそういう中でやはり変えていかない部分はたくさんあるんですけれども、もうそれぞれの職人が持っている技術っていうのをその包丁に伝えていくっていうことをやっているっていう国であり、日本のその包丁の文化であり、そういうところはもう他の国とは全然比べられないぐらいの技術の差だと思います。日本の包丁っていうのはだいたい4種類の包丁の職人が関わっているんですけれども、最初に関わるのは包丁の最初の焼き入れの部分、これは鍛冶師さんが関わるんですけどね。で全部のトータルの工程では16工程、最低でも16工程ぐらいあって、日本の職人徒弟制度って言われる弟子に、先生についた弟子がいろいろ先生から学んでいくっていうのは本当に日本の中で出来上がったそういう指定制度なんですけれども、それはもう日本の中の文化の中に非常に長く根付いたやっぱりこの750年の看板を背負うっていうのはかなり大変 なんで、あんまりそれは意識せずには自分の中でその時代の中をこう次に見送っていくところが私の大切な仕事かなっていうふうに思うんですけど、私の父親は50年この会社をやってたんですね。で私まだ2年半ですから、うちの会社の長く続けていかないといけないっていう中で、やはり聞く位置と堺の関係っていうのをすごく大切にしないといけないっていうのはすごく教えられましたよね。堺の職人さんがいないと聞く位置が存続していかないっていうところから考えて、聞く位置の存続していく方法っていうのは職人さんが必ずいて、商品を作ってくれるっていうところではないと聞く位置は存続していかないということはすごく教えられました。いろんなところで包丁はプロデュースされるけれども、日本の包丁の良さっていうのを伝えていく、それを守り抜いて次の時代に渡していくっていうことが存続していくための唯一の手段だと思います。それで聞く位置を存続させる意義があるかなっていうふうに私は考えてるんですけど。
Knife that we have here, and can you believe that it starts out as a piece of metal like that, and they work on it in all of those steps to make it as beautiful as this? And this is just feels like a dream. It is so light.
I know. That was the first kikuichi I ever bought, and it doesn't get sharpened too often. It stays sharp a lot longer than other knives, and it is a favorite.
I'll tell you, you must have a great knife drawer.
I have several drawers.
We should be streaming from there. Okay, we're going to move on to ceramic knives right now. So ceramic knives, I have one right here. A little on the controversial side. You know, people love them, people hate them, people break them. And some people just, they swear by them. This is the knife of choice. So I have no idea how they're made. But tell me what you think about these.
Yeah, so I think they're awesome when you're informed about how they are to be used. Sometimes people will come in and they're going to have a huge hole in it and they're going to say, well, I just cut squash with it. That's the problem. Lemons, limes, things that are lighter weight, tomatoes even, they're amazing for it. When you hit a peach pit, you can chip the knife. That's actually what my dad did the first time he used his.
And he has a knife store.
Yeah, he does. He should know better. That
should make you feel better.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. I mean, we all have one of those stories like, oh yeah, that didn't turn out so well. Super light. So we sell a lot of these to people with arthritis and have motion because you're not having to stress as much. It's in the handle. Yes, it's plastic, but that makes for a really light and comfortable knife. And so I think they're awesome for when you use them in kind of those purposes. Stick away from anything hard. They do say dishwasher safe. I think all knives, including ceramic, should be hand washed. You're just going to be happier with how they hold up. It's not just the knife edge, it's also how the handles hold up in the heat changing. And getting sharpening every day, we see quite a range of how people take care of knives and what happens in dishwasher every day versus hand washing. You can tell so quickly on what's hand washed, and they look new even years down the road.
I don't know about ceramic knives because I've never owned one,
Yeah.
but as far as metal knives go, they go in the dishwasher, and I've never done that personally, but when I had a restaurant, it would happen from time to time, and it changes the metal.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
So
I would say the handle looks best if you hand wash it. It just does. But they stay sharp. They stay 10 times longer than a metal knife. And I've definitely found that to be the case, especially when you use it for how it's intended. We are actually their only authorized service sharpener in the country. So we see ceramic knives getting mailed to us daily from across the country. And most of the time, if people are just getting them and there's no chips in the knife, they've gone years before needing to get it sharpened.
wow.
Maybe they had a house guest and there's a chip in the knife. They knew how to take care of it, but somebody didn't. Well, we can fix that. Blade repair is always possible, and a good knife is always worth fixing.
Well, I know that many people think they can't be sharpened.
Yes.
So that's one myth that is.
It's
a
not
myth.
easy. So ceramic, so on a metal knife, you can sharpen it on ceramic. So ceramic, you have to sharpen on diamond. So it is more expensive. It's $12 to get a ceramic knife sharpened, but we have to sharpen on a diamond wheel. So it's a lot more expensive equipment. But we can
diamonds, of
definitely,
course.
yeah, exactly. So it does make a big difference. And but my ceramic knife is still going sharp, and I've had it not quite 4 years, and it still has plenty of life to it.
Okay, that brings us to buying knives because, I see there are ceramic sets around here that certainly look attractive
Yeah.
and, Christmas gifts, that type of thing. But let's talk first about buying a knife for yourself.
Absolutely.
Now, I have an interesting story. When we decided to buy knives, my husband bought me a knife.
Yep.
And it was a Shun knife, and I loved it. So I bought him a knife. And I picked it out for him. He picked the one out for me. And quickly, we were both using the knives we had bought, not the knives we had been given, because we held them in our hands, and what felt good to us didn't work for the other person. So I view it as a very personal, in-person decision.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would very much agree with that. And it's, it varies so much, and it's funny. Some of these knife handles, they're all the same blade quality, just different handles. Someone can pick it up and go, this is the worst handle I've ever felt. And that would be the next person's favorite handle. And there's not a right knife. It's really, if it's not comfortable in your hand, it doesn't matter how nice of a knife it is, it's not the right knife for you. You gotta make sure it fits nicely and that you're also not afraid to use it. So that, if you like shorter knives, start there, because sometimes people come in like, well, my friend said I have to buy a 10-inch cook's knife. That's what you have to get. And that's great if that's the length you're comfortable using. Most people, that's just going to sit in your drawer. You're never going to touch that knife.
Right.
And
I have a knife
Yeah.
like that, yes.
And so that's the biggest thing, is get something and listen to what feels good for you, because no matter what any other person is saying, you're the one that's going to be using it.
Right. I mean, and I think it's wonderful to have a place like this where you can come in and talk to people who will walk you through what you actually need. So that takes, ordering on Amazon and that type of thing off the
Exactly.
list, because it's just too personal of a decision.
And even, I mean, sometimes, especially even so we sell hunting knives, and their grain varies greatly each knife. And we get people who order them online, but they call us first. And we're literally sending pictures of several options to them, because the stock image is not the knife you're going to get. And we want to make sure you love what style you're getting. And it really can change a little bit when you get a handmade knife. There's going to be some differences.
So speaking of really large knives, show them this knife. This is just
This is
awesome.
almost their largest knife. They have one 2 inches longer. This is the 12-inch heavy.
Don't point that at me.
We've sold 4 of them this year. Really, though, most people who buy this, barbecue competition, you're making a statement. It's not going to be super practical. That's just,
Maybe if you're going to do a butternut squash
Yeah.
lengthwise,
Exactly.
right?
We have sold one, she owned a farm, and she was cutting hundreds of watermelon. And she said that that's the weight that goes through it. And that was probably the only time I've sold it, for not just for showing off purposes.
Well, thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that out. When I saw it, it was just like, okay, that's the largest knife I think I've ever seen. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we've talked about buying, and we talked a little bit about caring for knives, and given the rule that you never put your knives in the dishwasher, wash them by hand, warm soapy water,
Yep.
rinse them well, dry them right away
Exactly.
if you can. And what about storing?
So The biggest thing is safety. You throw your knives in a drawer. If you're keeping your knife sharp, that's just kind of dangerous. You're reaching into a drawer, but it also helps protect the knife edges. So we have all of our knife display cases are going to use a magnet. That's a great option. There's blocks, and as long as your knife fits in the slots, that's great. Or there's in-drawer trays. That's also a really good option. The biggest thing is just that they're in a safe spot where they're not banging against other things. And I like to have them seen so then I don't forget that I have that specific knife. So I usually go with a block.
Okay. I have both magnets,
Yeah.
and then I have an in-drawer block where I can
Exactly.
see them. They're
Yep.
all laid out. As far as surfaces go, now I've seen some things on the internet that just curl my hair.
Yep.
People using a very good knife directly on marble or granite. It's not a good thing,
No,
is it?
it's not. It's and the unfortunate part is, let's say you're redoing your kitchen countertops. A lot of times you're going to get gifted the cutout of your sink as a cutting board.
Oh.
Not a cutting board. Great way to dull your knife instantly. You want to cut on something that scratches. And so from there, people do have very strong opinions about wood and plastic. They're both totally fine for your knife. If you're not comfortable using wood, go with plastic. Those can go in the dishwasher, but both of them are going to be great for your knife.
And this is
Is the kind of the hybrid.
right. This is composite.
Yep, it's composite wood, so you get the benefits of wood, but you truly don't have to take care of it. It can go in the dishwasher.
Oh, I've never done that.
It's
Really?
one of the few things,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
live and learn.
Yeah. And I use it as a trivet half the time because
Yeah.
you can put pots and pans on it. So I love that it holds up a lot better than plastic, but anything that you can scratch is going to be a good surface.
Well, plastic and these are NSF, which
Yep.
means you can use them in a commercial kitchen.
Exactly.
Wood, you can't, and that's just a potential of hoarding bacteria.
exactly.
That's the reason that you can't do it. But I have these in all kinds of sizes because I'll have a main cutting board set up, which generally is plastic,
Yep.
and then I use these for my herbs, and I use these for my tomatoes, and anything that is going to be messy that I want to just kind of put into a
Exactly.
pot quickly. I have all these little boards to do, and they're light. That is another thing that you can
Yes.
just pick them up easily. They're not something that you have to wrestle with.
Yeah. And it's fun. So our selection varies, and you won't see it on our website because we carry their imperfects. So like maybe their logo isn't centered, those really important details. And that's why we always have them at a kind of extra savings in store.
Well, and if you're like me and you're going through a lot, that's really helpful. So,
Exactly.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so what is, in terms of, we're moving on to sharpening here,
Yeah.
what's the worst blade damage that you've ever seen?
There's been a couple. Damage to the handle. Someone didn't notice that their knife was on the cookie tray in the oven.
Yeah, that would do
That was, I've never seen a handle melted like that. It had to have been in there for quite some time. That's not fixable, or at least for our standpoint, you'd have to make a new handle. But blade wise, usually, frozen food is a huge culprit, but my favorite was someone tried to cut down their Christmas tree with a Santuco, and it didn't work.
Wow.
It was missing like a quarter. So it became a slicing knife. The parents weren't happy.
So when you're fixing a blade, though, you can take a lot of that blade off
Absolutely.
to get rid of the
Yep.
damage.
And a good knife, it's worth fixing because it might not be so minor damage. You're not going to notice it happened. If you did something crazy and you're missing a large chunk, yes, you will notice it's a different knife. But we can make it become a slicing knife, or let's say someone used it as a pry bar and you lost the tip. We can repoint it. So we can kind of just change it into something that's equally functional. Maybe you still are sad, but you got a new knife that works well.
Well, and if you're using something like a Santoku a lot, you can literally sharpen through the dimples.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is not, we have people that have had theirs like 10 years, so they're well into their dimples. It still works. There's no reason to buy a new knife unless you want to, but those don't go bad.
Well, and I think people are afraid of sharpening, so we'll move on to sharpening now.
Yeah.
Because they think that they are going to lose too much
Yep.
of the knife, and they're afraid of their steel
Yeah.
or hone, whatever you want to call it, and that's mainly because they don't know what it does.
Yes.
So it just sits in the drawer. And the first thing to point out is that a hone is not a sharpener.
Yep.
It just hones, it just brings that edge up. But we're going to talk about sharpening first, which of course you do here.
Yes.
There are ways to sharpen your knives at home. I know that Wustroff makes little sharpening
Yep.
tools, and their Chef's Mate, is it Chef's Mate? Does an electric sharpener. Those types of things. Sometimes I use a whetstone, which is kind of an old-fashioned process and really messy.
Yeah. That's going to be the best way, though.
Yeah, it's definitely the best way, and except for coming here
Yeah.
is really the best way. So, so we have a little film of knives being sharpened here. I think it's only 35 seconds long. Will we be up, or is it going to take the whole screen?
It'll take the whole screen.
Okay.
All right.
So this is a hone. Isn't that a great little film?
It is.
It's mesmerizing to watch them
I
sharpen those
get
knives.
used to it, but it is fun to watch.
Yeah, we just stay glued to the window watching.
Yeah.
So this is a hone or a steel, and most knife sets come with them, and they're all a little bit different. This one seems to have some grooves on it. You had some ceramic ones over there.
Yeah.
Are those just for ceramic knives or for?
That's actually a great question because it's the opposite. So ceramic knives, leave alone. Ceramic steels are for any metal. So it can be, so knives have different hardnesses. Ceramic can handle any hardness. For hones, you kind of want to match it brand specific because it's going to be the right hardness for your knife.
Yeah, I can't remember which manufacturer I was looking at, but they had a whole section of a video
It's great.
on their hones.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they said, and I don't know if all manufacturers do this, but the angle that you're looking for is basically 16 to 20 degrees, correct? That hone, if you just put your blade like this, that's the angle. Are most of them made that way? Or is that just kind of that manufacturer?
It works generally like on a large knife.
Okay.
So, and they're kind of, it's hard. So companies are kind of going, it's under 20 degrees, but 14 is good. That's going to be the right angle. When you get to like a paring knife or a boning knife, it's kind of a weird angle.
Right,
But
it
it does
seems
give you a
to-
good visualization.
Seems to, yeah,
Yeah.
because you don't have the distance.
Exactly.
It seems too vertical
Yeah.
almost. But anyway, the way to do this, if you're just starting out with it, is hold this like this. Go ahead and put that blade and then just draw down and do both sides.
Yep.
And really 4 or 5 times.
Exactly.
And then once you get used to it, then you can just kind of do this. It's not a big deal, but you can't do this too much, right?
You know, the biggest thing is it doesn't, once your knife is dull, this doesn't do anything.
Right.
But don't be afraid to use it because really the worst you're going to do is you will dull your knife, but that's not wrecking it. It can be sharpened, but you really can extend how long your edge goes before it needs to be sharpened. So it's really not as intimidating as like cooking shows on TV make it look like when they're using it as like a sword. That way it's just safe and it's easy.
Right. I mean, well, and
Yeah.
it does make a very big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, you can feel the resistance when you're drawing a knife when it's just starting to lose that edge through a tomato.
Yeah.
And if a few swipes with this, and it'll cut cleanly.
Yeah.
So it does.
It really does. And that's, my dad is really good at using his steel. He probably goes 2 years without needing to get his knife sharpened. My brother doesn't use his steel, and he's more of a 6-month person on his favorite knives. So you really can, and maybe it's not where, you can kind of, well, I'd rather just get them sharpened, but it definitely does make a difference.
Totally does. And how do you know when your knife needs to be sharpened?
I would say
what's
the
your test?
biggest thing is, when you're smashing a tomato or when you're cutting something that you normally have success with and it's frustrating because cooking shouldn't be frustrating and your tool should work. When we test a knife when it's done sharpening, we do cut that. So it should be able to slice paper. You don't need to come in when it can't slice paper. That's like, it's perfectly sharp. But when you're like, okay, nope, I'm pushing down on a tomato, I'm smashing a celery or whatever, that's a good sign to get it get it sharpened.
Right, and if you get your knife sharpened, go home and slice a tomato and say, okay, this is what it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And then you have your parameters
Exactly.
drawn, your line you don't go past.
Yeah, it's kind of a baseline. Like, it doesn't go dull overnight, and so you kind of get used to it. A lot of times people, like, they'll be in the store and they're seeing a sharp knife and they're like, oh, wait, that's how it's supposed to be. Like, I should bring in all of my knives. They're not working.
Right, and there's no way to say just because it's all based on use. that
Exactly.
You can't say sharpen your knives every 3 months.
Yep.
But
I will say serrated knives, so you don't want to do anything at home taking care of those. We sharpen them tooth by tooth, but you should get a lot more life out of those before needing to get them sharpened.
that's another myth. I
Yep.
learned this last year because I had always been told by everyone
Yeah.
that you could not sharpen a serrated knife, and you
Yeah.
can.
Yes, but you don't want to do it how you sharpen a straight edge.
Right.
That's the...
Because then you'll just have a straight edge knife.
Yes, you will.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so speaking of tomatoes,
Yeah.
I have some down here that I'm going to pull up here. Okay, there we go. So what we're doing, we have some guests in our audience, and we're making some hors d'oeuvres for later when we're done. So we decided to use the food that we're going to serve as our demo food, and then we'll just eat it later. So I found as I was going through your stock, and how fun has this been to be able to go, and, like, the cabinets are open and I
Yeah.
can look at anything. It's just so fun. Anyway, so I found this little cutting board, which I think is a perfect tomato board. So it's kind of like what you would get if you were slicing meat, but it's small, and then all the juice of the tomatoes can just go here. I mean, how many times have you sliced tomatoes and wound up with juice all over your countertop, right? Don't you think this is perfect?
Yeah.
So this is my new tomato board. So, okay, what knife would you recommend for slicing this tomato?
So I would recommend a serrated knife. And if you had your option of multiple serrated knives, I like a little bit smaller. This is a 5-inch knife. You can use a bigger bread knife if that's what you have, but this you're going to have a little bit more control over. And serrations, it grips the skin and it doesn't crush it. So that's just a nice way to cut them.
So what is the difference between a serrated knife and a bread knife?
Size.
Size. Okay.
So a bread knife often is going to be like 8 inches. They make them longer too. So you will eat a little bit bigger serrations, but this can definitely cut a tomato. This is just a smaller version of it, so you have a little bit more control over it. And it just kind of depends on how many knives you want to have in your kitchen, because you can make either of those work really well.
Right, and I think that, you know, if you're just starting out and you get your good paring knife and your good chef's knife and a Santuco if you
Yep.
can afford it, I'd get both if you could. What else do you need?
You know, for me, I use like the Santuco shape. That's going to be my prep work. I use a smaller serrated more than a larger serration, just for day-to-day pieces.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's...
This is no resistance at all, just nothing. So I can go as thin as I want to.
Yeah. And I didn't think this would be the best knife until we started sharpening hundreds of them, but the ceramic is actually pretty fun to do on a tomato. That's how we test them when we are done
Holy
cutting.
cow, yeah. That's dangerous.
It is.
You don't feel that going in at all.
No. And so that I never would have thought to cut tomatoes with a ceramic knife until we've been interacting with people that have owned ceramic knives for like 20 plus years, and
Look at
it's
how
a game changer.
fine that
Yeah.
is. It's so perfect.
Yeah, so when we sharpen a ceramic knife, that is how we test them to
I
make
gotta
sure.
say, it feels like a toy.
Yeah, that's why we do not leave it out, because adults and kids will grab that thinking it's plastic, and
Right.
it is not.
Is there any metal on the inside, or is it straight?
It's all ceramic.
It's all ceramic.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. I'm going to do one more because I'm
it's just
having so
fun.
much fun. Look at that.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Well, and I can see, you know, if you have any issues with your hands, how this would be just a dream,
Yeah.
because it has no resistance, it has no weight,
Mm-hmm.
and it has complete control.
Yeah. And that if you have kind of like, sometimes we get people who get their knives sharpened right before like a shoulder surgery. You might want to get it sharpened a little bit more just to always make it really sharp, but it makes such a difference not having to struggle through something.
Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to set those there. Well, you know, as long as we're talking about kind of specialty knives, let's pull out the Mezzaluna. We're making a caprese
Yeah.
salad, so we're going to kind of go through some different knives that they have here in the store. Okay. Now, Mezzaluna, you can ignore my little price tag here. So these, I assume, were developed in Italy,
I mean, there's,
yeah,
yeah.
given the name. And I have one that's probably 40 years old.
yeah.
Yeah, so they've been around. But you were telling me that a lot of people get them in Alaska now?
Yes. So out of Alaska, they're called ulus, and we get, I guess Minnesota people like to go on vacation to Alaska, and a lot of people bring back their like bone antler handled ones, and it's the same exact shape, and it's just kind of fun stories to hear where people find their knives.
So there are artisans making these, or they're companies?
I think it's both. I think depending on where you find them, yes, definitely some people are hand making them, and then I think there's also mass production of them as well.
So the one that I have has handles,
Mm-hmm.
so you just kind of rock it like this. So this one, I'm assuming you do the same kind of thing.
Yep.
Rock it back and forth.
Exactly. And that's another good one if you don't really have a lot of knife skills, because your hands are out of the way and
Right.
it doesn't require too much.
Right. And if you've got to mince things, mince your garlic or whatever, I'm just doing these in kind of shreds. It's very sharp. It's
Yeah.
nice. But if you have to mince things, and you can just rock back and forth and just keep moving it. And the nice thing is this divot just keeps everything from flying all over the place.
Exactly.
I don't know about you, but I get garlic all over everything. I just
Exactly.
I love it, but boy, it's messy. So I love this. Okay, that's great. Well, that's just a kind of a unique, I think that would make a great gift for
Yeah.
somebody that, you know, especially a starting out cook.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And it's not, most people aren't going to have that knife shape, so it's kind of guaranteed to be a safe bet.
Okay, so I don't know where I'm going to put all
Do you
this.
want me to move
Yeah. Don't take it too far, though. Okay, so I have this like little magic stash down here. Okay, now those cheese knives. This is fresh mozzarella, and I'm assuming you're going to tell me to use this?
I would recommend that
Okay,
one.
so note the shape of this with these huge holes in it. And those are to,
So it's going to cut through it without crushing what you're cutting. So hopefully those holes kind of create air pockets. It takes those dimples to the next level.
oh yeah. So you know when you cut fresh mozzarella and the whole thing drags down and the shape
Yep.
gets, it's not doing that. Also very nice and sharp. I'm going to press a little bit. Oh yeah, so the shape is maintained, and that's because of these crazy looking holes. Fun. Very fun. I had a really hard time finding mozzarella to slice.
Right.
Yeah, it's all pre-sliced and it's all thick slices. So this is great.
And it's so much better when you can find it whole.
Well, everything is prepackaged these
Yeah,
days. It's just
exactly.
like nobody wants to do any work. Well, you would if you had these.
You know, that's the biggest thing is a dull knife is frustrating. So you're going to, skip some steps because it's kind of maddening to try to like pulverize some celery or peppers, but sharp, it makes it so much more enjoyable.
Well, and the people always say that dull knives are more dangerous.
Absolutely.
And I think that's because of the pressure that you have to
Yep.
exert. But I also think the danger is that then when you get your knives sharpened and they're sharp again, you forget.
Yes.
And, it's just really easy to even just pick up a knife like this and cut yourself without
Yep.
even realizing that blade is sharp enough to go
Yeah.
into your skin.
We always say to be careful if it's been a while after you get your knife sharpened. That transition will catch you, but it's definitely safer. You just want to, and anyways, with any sharp knife, just be focused on what you're doing and, don't try to multitask too much.
Okay, so take that away. What else do we have for our board here? Well, while we're on the subject of cheeses, let's look at this. So we have a whole bunch of different ones, and we can kind of talk about what knife. Can you hear me when I'm under the table? We have a whole bunch of cheeses here, and we can talk about which of these knives would be appropriate for which cheese.
Absolutely. So the harder ones, you're going to find, this is called a Parmesan cheese knife. It gives you the leverage because the thinner ones, you can kind of wave it. You want to have some leverage there. So I would use any hard cheese. You want to find like the shorter knife that you have.
Well, and the nice thing about this too is that the grip is far back from the blade.
Yep.
So you're not doing, and I'll show you this in a minute. You're not doing that choking up on the blade. You have so little distance.
Exactly.
So you can just put this out and have people, break off their little chunk of cheese. So it's really, really nice. And this is Parmesan, and this is a Manchego, another hard
Yep.
cheese. It's a little softer, but it's not really a semi-soft.
Yeah.
But it's nice too because you can just kind of push out the chunks like that, which is really great. Now for semi-soft cheese,
So they technically call this like a hard cheese knife, but I think that's kind of a good like middle ground. Not what I would use like on brie, but for most cheeses, that's going to be perfect.
okay, yeah,
And generally that style comes with that fork on the tip of it for serving.
so then you can just kind of
Exactly.
like that. Okay, so this is the one. I'm assuming we're going to probably go back to that mozzarella knife for this. This is a Délice de Bourguignon. It is a triple cream, extremely soft cheese. So I think I'm just going to go right down the center and see how it does. Again, look at how it's not grabbing it. It's cutting right through it. It's perfect.
Yeah. That's the
Must have. I've never had one of these.
it makes a
It's
difference.
wonderful. Okay, I can see people are getting hungry out there. Yes, okay. So now to complete our little soiree here, I have a few more things. What knife would you recommend for salami?
A serrated one.
How about this one?
That would work. Absolutely.
Okay.
Any serration. Kind of the same thought again with the tomato is it grips the skin on the outside and slices through it.
I'll tell you, these knives are all so incredibly sharp. Are you sure my serrated doesn't need to be sharpened?
That's the big, I mean, when you go to the day after Thanksgiving, we get tons of people in for sharpening because they use somebody else's knives.
Right.
And they're like, wait,
Right.
that's what it's supposed to do.
Right. Okay, and then we have some bread here, serrated as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to mix it up and. I'm getting it all in this space.
Yep.
It's not the easiest thing in the world,
Yeah.
but I'm getting it done. Maybe I'm not getting this out of the paper, but. Okay, and I think I have a little bread basket down there. Great. Again. And you'll notice as I'm holding this knife that I actually have my fingers on the blade. That is how you hold a knife. I see a lot of people doing things like this, and that's because they're afraid of the blade. And
Yes.
and it seems like it would be more comfortable in
Or
public.
safer even, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you gotta be one with the blade, then it's one with your arm. This, and I see this in a lot of photographs, but this can happen. You gotta make sure that your fingers don't accidentally end up on the sharp or under the sharp part of the blade. And again, if you can, like this type of thing, hold it like this. You can hold it like this and be back if it's more comfortable for you, but just be really aware of where this blade is.
Absolutely.
And before you start slicing anything, just take 1 second and say, I'm going to think about what I'm doing. Don't do it
Absolutely.
mindlessly, especially if your knives are even a little bit unfamiliar. This is great.
Yeah, I would say most of our cuts that we get here are from distraction, not, we're rushing and we're doing something too quickly, and that's how that happens.
So I'll say the one time I cut myself in the kitchen and it was a rough cut was I picked up someone else's knife, and it was I usually work with a 6-inch chef knife, and it was I think an 8-inch, and I just sliced my hand because I didn't realize what the length was, and it had the same handle as my knife. So when you mix up knives, be careful as well too. I usually when I'm going to help someone cook or I'm working and I'm doing a demo, I bring my own knives with me.
Yeah.
And they have beautiful cases to
Yeah,
carry them
we do.
around. Yes, you do. All right, what's next here? I was going to peel an apple because we have a peeler that you were talking about I wanted to see.
Yeah. So I've probably tested like 20 different peelers. We sell 2. And this one is definitely my favorite. You wouldn't think there's such a difference in how things work. I'm right-handed, so I didn't know left-handed people had this problem, but this works for lefties too.
Oh, okay.
A lot of
Yeah.
tools are not made for lefties.
Yes. Mark sitting behind the
Yeah.
camera over there is a lefty, and I know he knows that.
Yeah.
There's also apparently a problem with where water is on a table when you go out to
Oh,
dinner.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, again, sharp. Everything's so sharp.
And what's
Perfect.
nice is there's like a swivel to it, and so that's where left and right-handed people, it works well.
Right. Yeah, really great. Well, we'll slice this up. Okay, to slice this, would you use a paring knife, a small serrated knife?
I would use either a paring knife, like, or a utility kind of serrated. Any of those are going to cut it
Okay.
totally fine.
So we're getting close to wrapping up here,
Yeah.
but I had a couple of last things I wanted to take a look at as long as we're in this wonderful
Absolutely.
store. I noticed that you have axes.
Yeah, we do.
So, and I thought to myself, it's not that I'm in the market for an axe, but I wouldn't know where to go and get one.
Right.
And they are here and they are amazing. So Maddie's going to go and find me an axe. Look at that. And you
So-
sharpen these too?
We do. We call it a garden tool when you look up our pricing, but yes, we can definitely sharpen them. The nice part, so my brother is big into boundary waters, and so we get his expertise on what axes to get and what kind of outdoor carrying knives to carry. And so our axes, we have some from Germany and then some from Sweden, and they're phenomenal. But we also sharpened any quality axe. They all need to be sharpened. So yeah, you can even find some axes, like this guy is a little under $100. So not the most inexpensive ones, but they're really great quality.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to look at, and I don't know if you have it up here, was I know you have like clippers.
Yes.
You have clippers. This is like a big deal because they're such fine quality. It's a manicurist's dream.
Yeah, so these are $30 a piece, but this is the best nail clipper. So
So cute.
the only time I say this is not good for you is if you're losing them. I can't help you with that, but if you don't lose your nail clippers, this is the best nail clipper.
Oh, if you're losing your nail
Yep.
clippers. I thought you meant if you're losing your nails. I
Yeah,
was
no,
like-
you're like, who does that? No, so like some people are like, I lost this again. Nope, that's probably not the best. Stick with the less expensive ones. But I've had mine 5 years, still super sharp. But we sell a crazy amount of these because people are like, why is there a $30 nail clipper in this store? And then we explain to them that we love them.
Okay, last but not least, you have some hunting knives.
We
that
do. So same concept. These are handmade in Norway. So really
Wow.
fun. Every one has a little bit different character in the wood grain, which is really fun. And all the sheaths are going to be different for the different handles. And they're just awesome. We've had those probably at least 10 years now, and they're just really cool. Again, small family that does them.
Great gift. Absolutely great gift. Okay, so did we get any questions in?
Not in here.
Not in here, so I didn't think we would just because we're not actually streaming to anywhere.
Yeah,
So-
that works.
So, but anyway, I think we will wrap it up.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you all and thank you, Maddie. This has been
Thank you.
really, really fun.
Yeah.
We are going to have quite a party here in
Exactly.
about 20 seconds. Thank you guys for watching so much. Please come into Eversharp Kitchen Store in Northeast Minneapolis and check out Bonicelli Cooking Club and have a wonderful and very sharp holiday.
Yeah.
Take care. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.